Jack Carter thought he was safe in his quiet village, until the night he woke up to whispers on his roof. A team of professional thieves had come, not just for his home, but for something far bigger. As Jack fights back, he realizes this isn't just a robbery, it's a setup. A buried past, a lost brother, and a deadly conspiracy unfold as the attackers return with even greater force. Jack must outsmart them all, or lose everything. The shadows on the roof. Jack Carter had always been a man of habit. Every night he locked his doors, checked the windows, and set his home security before heading to bed. Living in the quiet town of Ravenshade, crime was rare, but something felt off that night. The wind howled outside, rattling the branches against his windows. As Jack lay in bed, his instincts jolted him awake. A sound, soft, deliberate, came from the roof. His military training kicked in. He remained motionless, listening. Another noise, a faint scuffle like boots scraping against shingles. Jack knew this wasn't a raccoon or the wind. Someone was up there. Slipping out of bed, he moved silently, avoiding the creaky spots on the wooden floor. He grabbed his flashlight, turned it off, and peered through the window. In the dim moonlight, he saw movement. Shadows flickered across the rooftop. His heart pounded. This wasn't a random break-in. This was an organized job. Who were they, and why had they chosen his house? Jack grabbed his phone to call the police, but stopped. If these men were professionals, they'd have planned for that. Cutting power, jamming signals, it was all possible. He needed to outthink them before they made their move. Then the whispering started. Low voices, right above his head. And then, a metallic clink. Jack's stomach twisted. They weren't just breaking in. They were setting up for something much, much worse. Then, a loud bang. Jack slipped into his closet and pulled out his emergency bag. A tactical flashlight, a hunting knife, and a Glock 19, just in case things got ugly. He moved toward the back of the house, keeping to the shadows. The thieves were still on the roof, unaware he was awake. Another bang. This time from the back door. A cold sweat formed on Jack's forehead. They weren't just coming from above, they were surrounding him. A sudden thud echoed from above. One of them had dropped something. Jack gritted his teeth. They were getting ready to break in. Then another realization hit him. These weren't just thieves. Their approach was too calculated, their movements too precise. These were professionals. He had to act fast. Jack darted toward the garage. He disabled his motion sensor floodlights. He didn't want them knowing he was awake. Then he unlocked the side door and crept outside, keeping to the shadows. He looked up. 3 figures. One knelt by the chimney, securing a rope. The others prepared to descend. His house was just the start. If he didn't stop them now, they'd move to other homes in the village. A sharp chill ran down Jack's spine. They weren't stealing. They were hunting, and Jack was their prey. Jack carefully navigated around the house, keeping low. He heard the faint hum of a device, a signal jammer. That explained why his phone wasn't working. They had come prepared. He needed to create a distraction, make them think their plan had gone sideways. He spotted his old generator in the backyard. If he could get it running, the sudden noise might throw them off just long enough for him to make a move. As he reached for the switch, he heard footsteps approaching. Someone was in his backyard. He crouched low, gripping the handle of his knife. The figure moved closer. Jack held his breath. The man turned slightly, just enough for Jack to see the gleam of a gun in his hand. Jack had 2 choices, wait and risk being spotted or strike first. He chose the latter. In a swift, practiced movement, he sprang forward, wrapping his arm around the intruder's neck in a chokehold. The man struggled, kicking at the ground, but Jack held firm. Within seconds, the body went limp. Jack gently lowered him to the ground, searching his pockets. A burner phone. No markings on his clothes. No ID. These guys weren't common criminals. He dialed 911 on the phone, but the line was dead. The jammer was still active. He needed to take out the others before they realized one of their own was down. Jack moved toward the side of the house. He could hear them whispering above. "He's still asleep," one of them muttered. "We do this quiet, in and out." Jack clenched his jaw. Not on his watch. He picked up a handful of small stones and threw them toward the woods. The noise made the thieves pause. One of them whispered, What was that? Another responded, "Just the wind. Keep moving." Jack smirked. They were on edge. He waited until one of them began to rappel down, then turned on his flashlight, full power, blinding them. "Big mistake," he said calmly. The thief panicked, lost his grip, and crashed onto the porch roof. The other two scrambled to retreat, but Jack was faster. He grabbed a rake from the side of the house and yanked their rope loose. The second man fell, landing hard on his side. The third thief managed to climb back onto the roof. Jack could hear him cursing. He was the leader, and he wasn't running. Instead, he growled, "You just made the worst mistake of your life." Jack's adrenaline surged. "Come and prove it." Then his phone vibrated. A single message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have done that, Jack." Jack's blood ran cold. They knew his name. Jack took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. He had the advantage of knowing his home better than they did. But these men were professionals. One wrong move, and he'd be the one caught in their trap. He crept toward the garage where he had an old toolbox filled with supplies. He pulled out a roll of fishing wire and some nails. If they wanted to come inside, he'd make them regret it. Working quickly but silently, he rigged a tripwire near the back door, attaching it to a shelf stacked with heavy paint cans. If anyone entered, they'd trigger an avalanche. It wasn't much, but it would buy him time. He moved to the front door next. Using duct tape and a pair of garden shears, he rigged a crude but effective swinging blade trap. If they forced their way in, the shears would slice at knee level, enough to wound and slow them down. Jack then positioned himself near the staircase, gripping his Glock. He had to be smart. He couldn't afford a full-blown gunfight. He was outnumbered. But if he could take them down one by one, he had a chance. A creak came from the back door. They were testing his defenses. He held his breath as a figure slowly entered. The moment the intruder's foot hit the tripwire, a deafening crash filled the house. The paint cans tumbled down, slamming into the thief, knocking him flat. "What the hell was that?" one of the men outside whispered harshly. Jack didn't hesitate. He leaped from his hiding spot, delivering a swift kick to the man's temple. He collapsed instantly. "He's awake!" another voice shouted. Jack darted upstairs, taking cover in the hallway. The leader, the one who had sent him the message, entered through the front, dodging the swinging shears just in time. "Clever," the man muttered, scanning the house. "But not clever enough." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just a robbery. These men weren't here for money or valuables. They were after him. As footsteps approached, Jack fired a warning shot. "You step 1 inch closer and I won't miss next time." The leader chuckled. "You think this is about you, Jack? You have no idea what's coming." Before Jack could respond, the sound of an approaching vehicle roared outside. More of them. He was running out of time. Jack's heart pounded as he peered out the window. More headlights appeared in the distance, cutting through the darkness. The attackers weren't just a handful of criminals. This was an organized assault. His village was in danger. He had two choices: stay and fight alone, or warn his neighbors. He clenched his jaw. He wasn't letting these men tear apart his home. He grabbed his emergency flare gun and fired it into the night sky. The red light arched high, illuminating the village. A few seconds passed, then porch lights flickered on. People were waking up. He hoped they understood the warning before it was too late. A loud bang came from the back of his house. They were breaking in. Jack sprinted toward his makeshift barricade, pressing his back against the wall. A shadow moved through the shattered doorway. Jack swung hard, smashing a metal pipe into the intruder's head. The man crumpled instantly. Gunfire erupted outside. Jack ducked. The villagers had armed themselves, returning fire. These weren't helpless civilians. Many had hunting rifles, shotguns, and sheer determination. The thieves hadn't expected resistance. Jack dashed toward the front door, joining a group of neighbors who had gathered outside. "They're using signal jammers," he yelled. "We can't call for help. We have to stop them here." Old Man Harris, a retired Marine, nodded grimly. "Then we make them regret coming here." Jack took charge. "We need blockades at every road. Use cars, anything heavy. We have to trap them. And don't let them split us up." The villagers moved quickly, overturning tractors and piling debris to create makeshift barriers. Jack climbed onto a rooftop, scanning the approaching attackers. They wore dark tactical gear, moving like a strike force, but they weren't ready for what was coming next. A shotgun blast rang out as one of the villagers took down an approaching thief. Chaos erupted. Gunfire lit up the night as both sides clashed. Jack saw an opening. He leaped down, rolling into cover. Two attackers rushed him. He shot one in the knee and slammed the other into a wall, knocking him unconscious. The battle raged on, but the villagers fought with everything they had. Then, just as victory seemed possible, Jack heard a chilling sound, the roar of an engine. A black SUV smashed through the barricades, and a tall figure stepped out. The leader. The man smiled coldly. "You've done well, Jack, but this isn't over." Jack raised his gun, but before he could fire, the leader tossed something at his feet. A small, blood-stained badge. Jack's stomach dropped. It was his brother's. "We need to talk," the man said, his voice filled with dark amusement, "or your past will catch up to you." Jack's breath hitched as he stared at the blood-stained badge. His brother's badge. For years he had believed his brother, Michael, had died in action overseas. But if this man, the leader of the attackers, had it, then something far worse was at play. "Who are you?" Jack demanded, keeping his gun trained on the man. The leader smirked. "You already know the answer. You just don't want to believe it." Jack's mind raced. He had buried his brother. He had attended the funeral. How could Michael be alive? The man took a step closer, hands raised in mock surrender. "We don't have much time, Jack. If you kill me now, you'll never get the answers you need." Jack gritted his teeth. He wanted to put a bullet between this man's eyes, but something about his words made him hesitate. Then a gunshot rang out. Jack flinched, expecting pain, but the bullet wasn't meant for him. It struck the ground between them. From the shadows, another group of figures emerged. More armed men, more enemies, but something was different about them. "Stand down," a voice called. Jack's heart nearly stopped. He knew that voice. From the darkness, a man stepped into the dim glow of the streetlights. His clothes were battered, his face older than Jack remembered, but there was no mistaking it. "Michael?" Jack whispered, disbelief coursing through him. His brother was alive. Michael's expression was unreadable. "It's complicated, Jack, but we need to go. Now." The village was still burning, the remaining thieves either dead or captured by the villagers, but this was far from over. Jack looked between Michael and the leader of the attackers. "You're with them?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Michael shook his head. "Number I was trying to stop them. This isn't just a robbery, Jack. It never was. These men, they work for someone bigger. Someone who wanted you dead the moment you started fighting back." The leader chuckled, despite the situation. "You always were the stubborn one, Michael. And now you've dragged your brother into this mess." Jack tightened his grip on his gun. "What mess?" "Talk, now." Michael hesitated. This village was never their target. "You were." Jack's blood ran cold. "Me? Why?" The leader took a step forward, amusement dancing in his eyes. "Because you're the last piece of the puzzle. Your past has finally caught up to you, and now it's time to finish what was started." Before Jack could react, a flashbang exploded at his feet, blinding him. He stumbled backward, ears ringing, vision white. When the world finally came back into focus, the leader was gone. Michael grabbed Jack's arm. "We have to go. They'll be back. And next time, they won't make the mistake of underestimating you." Jack clenched his fists. He had survived the night. He had saved his home. But now he had a new mission. He had to uncover the truth, even if it meant walking into the darkness himself.